Joining us this morning, Congressman Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, and he serves on the Armed Services Committee. Sir, you're a 30-year veteran of the Air Force. The House recently passed the National Defense Authorization Bill. Give us the highlights and what you think this will do for the military.
I think the number one thing that we're able to do in the defense bill was to find a way to modernize our nuclear force, which is very old. All three legs of our triad, the ICBMs, which is the ground part, the sea-launched ballistic missiles with our submarines, and our bombers, all three are old and need to be replacing. So we found a way to invest in all three legs of the triad while also investing in stealth fighters, more modernized ships, because we have to be able to counter Russia, who's being very aggressive, obviously with Ukraine, threatening the Eastern Europe, which is part of NATO. But also we see a resurging China, which is threatening Taiwan. So we had to be able to develop a conventional capability, invest there, while also catching up with our nuclear investments. And the real challenge for us was, Greta, that President Biden proposed a 4% cut after inflation, and that there was no way to fund all of this with a 4% cut. We restored that 4% back in, plus a couple percent, and I think that allows us to build a military that could deter China and Russia and do all the things that we need to do. Plus, we gave a strong pay raise for all the military, but we also added more pay raise for our enlisted forces who need it the most.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to stick with overall addressing threats that the nation faces, as you said, from Russia and China. The United States has given a lot of weapons to Ukraine. Do you have any concerns, or how will those stockpiles be filled back up after giving weapons to Ukraine?
Well, that was part of the $40 billion bill that we passed a couple months ago. We'd given a lot of weapons to Ukraine. We had to resupply our own forces. But I think it's necessary to do this. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was unprovoked, unjust, it's barbaric. Indiscriminate bombing of Ukrainian cities. Half of the women are being assaulted. Roughly, that's what we're hearing from the areas that the Russians occupy. They've moved over 2 million Ukrainians into Russia and dispersing them. This is a crime against humanity, what Russia's doing. But we have to know, if Ukraine loses, that will not be the last. Putin's already threatening the Baltics, calling them renegade states. So the cost of losing is much higher than what we're doing now. We have to help Ukraine prevail so that Putin and the Russians know that they cannot get away with doing this. What we're seeing is pre-World War II behavior, and it's totally unacceptable. But it costs money, but we have to realize the Ukrainians are doing the fighting. We're enabling them to fight back and try to preserve their independence.
On China, the president is speaking in less than 25 minutes to the president of China amid tensions over Taiwan. Can you describe what you're hearing from the military about the situation in China when it comes to Taiwan, and what is the military strategy?
Well, again, the Chinese were looking at what was our response going to be to Ukraine, and if it was weak, that was going to inform their decisions how to handle Taiwan. I think we have an obligation to Taiwan, a country of 24 million people. They've embraced our ideas of democracy, freedom of the press, freedom of the religion, free market system. They're one of the more prosperous countries in the world per capita. They want to have a close relationship with us. They treasure their freedom. The main goal that we have to do with Taiwan is help them defend themselves now. Day one of the war is too late. So we need to encourage Taiwan, and we should work with them to develop or to acquire anti-shipping missiles that can hit Chinese ships with amphibious ships coming across the straits, long-range air defense capabilities so we can hit their bombers or their fighters, so Taiwan can do that. But also we need to provide or work with them on anti-ballistic missile technologies. No doubt, day one of a war with China and Taiwan, China will try to hit Taiwan with a lot of ballistic missiles to take out their air defenses and key strategic facilities. We have to help them with that now, with the hope that they'll never have to use it, but to deter China from ever invading. And I would like to say one more thing, Greta.
Sure.
Speaker Pelosi's been wanting to go to Taiwan, and China's been making threats on that. And I was discouraged to hear President Biden sort of take China's side on this. China does not have a right to tell Americans who can visit Taiwan. They're trying to threaten us and browbeat us. We should not fall for that.
Do you think the speaker should go?
Yes. I think it sends the wrong message now when Taiwan threatens, or China threatens, excuse me, and we cower to those threats. I think also by her visit and I visited there a couple of years ago, these visits display a commitment to Taiwan and also shows China that we're serious with our relationship with Taiwan. So it would be a mistake to pull back and to allow China to threaten us and for us to retreat from that.
Congressman, back to this defense bill. It authorizes $839 billion in national defense spending, $37 billion more than the Biden administration had requested, as you said, a 4.6% pay raise for troops, the largest in 20 years, and it includes inflation bonuses for service members and civilians earning less than $45,000 a year. What do you think this does for recruitment?
Well, it's going to help retain and recruit, particularly our enlisted forces. And right now, recruitment is down, and there's a couple of factors for that, and I could go into that. One of the main things is we're competing with the private sector, though, and we have a very low unemployment. However, we have a low workforce participation rate in our country, too. But we need to attract good people into the military. And a concern that I have, for about the last decade, about 72% of the young folks at 18 years old, 19 and 20, 72% were not qualified to join the military. I've seen recent numbers. Those numbers are going up now, and it's about 75% or a little higher. That should alarm us. I think it's becoming a national priority to figure out how do we encourage physical fitness, better nutrition, better health for our teenagers and young folks. When 75% of our youth cannot qualify to get in the military, that's a problem. I think our country needs to take that seriously.
The Army Secretary from the Associated Press, I'll read what she had to say. The Army is facing our most challenging recruiting environment since the inception of the all-volunteer force. This is not a one-year challenge. We will not solve this overnight. What is it looking like? I mean, how many years are we talking about?
Well, I think it's going to take a little time to turn that around. I remember the great years under Reagan where it was patriotic to join. I think we have 3 or 4 things going on here, and it's all come together. First of all, we have post-COVID, and by the way, we're kicking out tens of thousands of military who want to stay in because they didn't take the COVID shot. I think that's a mistake. I took every vaccine that the military wanted to give me, but we also have to realize the COVID vaccines have been politicized on both sides, and I can back that up. I think our 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds were, I think, rightfully confused when you hear people hitting them from both directions on this. And I think we should show them some mercy and grace, allow them to stay into the military. But you also have post-Afghanistan. What happened in Afghanistan was a travesty. It was a botched withdrawal. And I think it lowered a little bit of the perception of the military. You have a perception in the conservative areas that the military has gone too woke. And I think that our military leadership should be concerned about that and make sure they're communicating more clearly. That we are about defending our country, defending our freedoms. Some of that has been lost in translation. But also coming out of COVID, with this low unemployment, the private sector is competing for that other 25% very aggressively. And the military's got to step up and make sure it provides a very competitive and inviting career path for folks coming out of high school and college. So you see all this coming together. It's going to take a little work to get us pointed the right way.
You mentioned that soldiers wanting to join the armed forces are not meeting the requirements. I want to show with our viewers what they are. This applies to ages between 17 and 35. You have to be medically and physically fit and in good moral standing, a U.S. citizen or permanent resident with a valid green card, a high school graduate or equivalent, and a minimum score on the Army's placement exam. This physically fit portion of it. How do you address that when they are, applying to get into the armed services as basically teenagers?
It's one of my biggest concerns, Greta. Half the high schools right now don't have physical education. I think we have to make this a priority in our schools. I think we need more community or like neighborhood sports options. And I just think we need to raise the level of this discussion so that parents realize that this is a problem. So this is a national issue. It's a local issue, and I think we have to raise the bar on this. When I say 75% of our youth cannot get in the military, the lion's share of that is physical fitness. It's not all of it. There's some other issues there, as you pointed out, some other criteria. But a lot of our high school kids today are not being, incentivized or encouraged to participate in sports. I knew when I was a kid, we had 3 TV channels, and during the afternoons, they were all soap operas. The only thing to do was to play outside. Today, our young folks have hundreds of channels to pick from. In some cases, a lot of computer games. So we have to just encourage and make it a priority to get our young folks involved in physical activity. I worked on the farm 8, 10, 12 hours a day baling hay. I don't know that a lot of our youth today have these opportunities where it's just a natural part of life to be in shape. But this is a problem. When 3/4 of our youth cannot defend their country, we got to realize it's an issue and we can't ignore it. I think we have been. This has not been a priority in our dialogue in our country, and it needs to be.